I transmigrated into the most useless bachelor in northeast China in 1980. My parents were dead, my wife had been taken away, and I still got beaten up by street punks every day. The moment I opened my eyes, I ran into this. My fiancée was kneeling and begging me to take her in, while my future sister-in-law was being pinned in the yard by two thugs who were feeling up her face. The original owner had been a coward his whole life and finally drank himself to death. Now I'm here. In my previous life, I was a wilderness survival blogger, fighting a wild boar barehanded in Shenanjia. Today, I'll let all of Hushan Village know, whoever lays a hand on my family will die. Brother Qin Tian, please, I beg you, don't drive us away. I'll do anything you ask me to. In my ear was a woman's tearful voice, and I suddenly opened my eyes. A low mud brick house, a yellowed old newspaper ceiling, and a delicate-looking woman, crying like pear blossoms in the rain, kneeling in front of me. Her clothes half open, revealing pale shoulders covered in shocking wounds. Holy crap, I transmigrated? As a wilderness survival blogger, 1 second ago, I was still fighting for my life with a wild boar. And the next second, I became Qin Tian of Hushan Village in the lesser Xing'an Mountains of northeast China in 1980. Just turned 18, my parents died last year, and I was a bachelor. The woman before me is named Qin Tian, the child bride my parents arranged for me. Her parents were killed by a black bear while up in the mountains 3 months ago, leaving only her and her 14-year-old younger sister, Qin Yuqing. That beast of an uncle, Qin Dali, seized their house and worked the two sisters like animals, beating and cursing them at every turn. He was also determined to marry her off to a 50-year-old cripple and marry Yuqing off to a fool. Also, his own son could get a reciprocal marriage arrangement. The two sisters really couldn't take it anymore, so they ran away overnight to seek refuge with me. Unfortunately, the original Qin Tian was a coward, scared stiff by a few local bachelors in the village, and afraid that Qin Dali would really come and beat him to death. So today he had some drinks and planned to send them back, but the alcohol hit too hard, and he just died on the spot, which worked out nicely for me. Brother Qin Tian. Shueting was still crying, her hands trembling as she undid the buttons of her cotton-padded jacket, revealing the bulging doo-doo underneath. I had just opened my mouth to speak when a burst of commotion came from outside. It was Yuqing's voice. What a pretty little girl. Come on, little sis, let big brother take you home and warm you up. What can a useless trash like Qin Tian do to take care of you? Better come have some fun with us brothers. I rushed out and saw at a glance 2 young men in dogskin hats, with mouths full of yellow teeth, dragging Yuqing around in the yard, their hands groping all over her face. The 13 or 14-year-old girl was so frightened that she kept crying, struggling with all her might, but unable to break free. Ma Biao, Lu Ergu, you two are asking to die? I stepped forward and shielded Shueting behind me. These two were notorious loafers in the village, always stealing chickens and dogs, and peeping on women while they bathed. The original Qin Tian had been bullied by them plenty. Yo, Qin Tian, you little punk, you dare yell at us? Feeling itchy for another beating, huh? Ma Biao let go of Yuqing, rolled up his sleeves, and walked toward me. If you dare call the village party secretary, I'll break your legs. Lu Erga followed too. I sneered. The original Qin Tian was afraid of you, but I sure as hell am not. The village party secretary is right nearby. Once today's incident is confirmed, you'll be charged with hooliganism. Just wait to catch a bullet. Shueting, go get the village party secretary. Shueting bit her lip, glanced at her little sister, and took off running. Ma Biao's expression changed, and he hurried to stop her. The hell you do? He turned and roared at me. Cut that crap. You're fooling around with 2 little girls. If this gets reported, you won't get off easy either. Besides, Qin Dali is looking for them right now. If he finds out they're here with you, we won't even have to do anything. He'll break your legs first. Lu Ergu smirked nastily. If you know what's good for you, let their 2 sisters serve us once, and we'll let this matter drop. Otherwise, not only will you get beaten up, you'll also be sent to a labor camp. My gaze turned cold. Shuling and I were betrothed by our parents since childhood, and the village party secretary is the witness. We're in a proper relationship. Even if Qin Dali comes, he still won't be able to take them away. As for you two, you broke into my house and acted like hooligans. There's solid evidence. Shuling, go? Shuling hesitated no more and took off running outside. Ma Biao and Lu Erga panicked. The village party secretary was a former soldier, the kind who had zero tolerance for wrongdoing. If this really blew up, they'd be the ones in trouble. The 2 of them quickly forced smiles. We were just joking, no need to scare the children in this freezing weather. After saying that, they let go of Yuqing and ran off dejectedly. I picked up Yuqing, who was trembling all over. Shueting rushed back and hugged her little sister, crying in each other's arms. Brother-in-law, thank you. Come home with your brother-in-law. I took both of them by the hand and walked toward the house. Brother Qin Tian, you're not driving us away anymore? Wedding's eyes were red, full of hope. I paused and turned back to look at them. From now on, you'll stay here, and no one will take you away. Wedding nodded hard through her tears and said softly, I'll take good care of you. However you want is fine. My old face flushed red. Damn, after being single for over 20 years, I'd never seen anything like this. But all we had left at home were cabbages and potatoes. Now with 2 extra mouths to feed, I had to find something to eat. I grabbed the longbow hanging on the wall. I'm going up the mountain to look around and hunt some game. Wedding panicked. It just snowed. The mountain is dangerous. It's fine. I'll just look around the edge. But the 2 of them dashed off to the outer room, lit the fire and started cooking, and packed a lunchbox full, then stuffed in 2 more corn cakes. Carrying the still warm lunchbox, I headed out with warmth in my heart. When the people in the village saw me carrying a bow and arrow, they all muttered behind my back. That good-for-nothing Qin Tian can hunt too. More likely he'll sell the bow and arrows for drinking money. I ignored them and plunged straight into the woods. This northeastern cold is truly brutal. Rubbing my hands and face, I trudged through the crunching snow for nearly 2 hours. At last, I spotted 2 pheasants pecking for food in the bushes. I held my breath and drew the bow whoosh. 1 arrow hit a pheasant right in the head. The other took off in fright, and I chased after it and finished it off with another arrow, dropping them both. I had just bled the chickens and stuffed them into a snakeskin bag when I heard a low grunting sound not far away. Crouching low, I crept over to take a look, and my scalp went numb. A whole herd of wild boars in the valley, 9 of them. There were even 2 full-grown boars, with huge tusks that could gore a person clean through with 1 thrust. I didn't dare move. A bow and arrow might work on small game, but going head-on against beasts like that was suicide. I need to save up and get a gun. I slowly backed away and skirted around the valley on my way down the mountain. After barely 10 minutes of walking, 2 figures suddenly sprang out of the woods, Ma Biao and Lu Ergu, each with a gleaming hunting knife in hand. You little bastard, can't call for the village party secretary now, can you? Ma Biao sneered. If I don't break your legs today, I'll take your surname. In this icy wilderness, if we dump you in a snowdrift, who the hell would know it's you? Lu Ergu pointed the tip of his knife at me. If you know what's good for you, hand over the game. And tonight we'll have your little wife serve us men properly. And we'll spare your life. I tightened my grip on the bow, murderous intent flashing in my eyes. In my previous life, I shot wilderness survival videos and had blood on my hands too. Leaving scum like them alive would only bring trouble. I turned my head. You 2 think you're worthy? Then I took off running. They chased hard behind me. Fuck. Hack him to death. I ran straight for the wild boar valley from earlier, and when I reached the mouth of the valley, I dove into the nearby bushes and hid. Ma Biao and Lu Ergu chased right up and, without a second thought, rushed into the valley. The next second, holy shit. Wild boars. In the valley, 9 wild boars lifted their heads at the same time, their cannonball-sized balls staring with blood-red eyes at the uninvited guests. I poked my head out from the bushes and drew my bow whoosh. 1 arrow struck the biggest boar right in the head. A wild boar's hide is thick, so the arrow didn't pierce through, but the pain drove it instantly mad. Squealing, it charged straight at Ma Biao and Lu Ergu. Run. The 2 were scared out of their wits. Turned and ran. But how could 2 legs outrun a crazed wild boar? In just a few steps, they were flipped over by its tusks. I didn't sit idle either. Taking advantage of the chaos, I shot arrow after arrow at the young boars, dropping 4 in a row. By the time the boar herd roared and scattered deep into the forest, only 2 mangled corpses were left in the valley. My stomach churned, but I didn't regret it. If I hadn't killed them, I'd be the one dead. Just as I was worrying about how to carry 4 young boars back, suddenly, the boars on the ground vanished into thin air. My mind jolted, and a crystal-clear jade gourd appeared in my thoughts. With a space of about 10 cubic meters inside, the 4 boars stacked neatly within it. I was so excited I nearly jumped up. Holy shit. A cheat ability. I picked up this jade gourd in Shenanjia, so that's how badass it is. With a thought, the bow and arrows and the pheasants were all stored away. Taking them out only took a second too. I quickly cleaned up the scene and erased every trace of myself. As for Ma Biao and Lu Ergu, the wild boar killed them. What the hell does it have to do with me? Before heading down the mountain, I rested on a sheltered hilltop. My stomach was growling, so I took out the lunchbox Wedding had prepared from the space, cut off a piece of wild boar meat, and roasted it, and ate until I was full with cornbread, my whole body warming up. When I got outside the village, I looked around and saw no one, So I took out the smallest wild boar and 2 pheasants from the space, slung them over my shoulder, and swaggered back. Damn, Qin Tian got a wild boar. No way. A useless piece of trash like him can hunt a wild boar? He must have stolen it. Maybe he stole it from someone else's trap. Hey, I heard he ran off with 2 girls, and now their people have come looking for him. The moment I heard that, my face changed drastically and I took off running for home. A crowd had gathered at my front door, and the courtyard was filled with shouting and cursing. 2 little sluts, worthless losers. Not even coming home and sleeping with some wild man instead. You've thrown away all your shame. Let go of me. Brother Qin Tian isn't some wild man. You still dare talk back? Let's see if I don't break your legs today. I kicked the door open with 1 foot, furious beyond words. Chen Dali and that fat sow of a wife, Zhao Chuiying, were dragging Xueting and Yuqing outside. The sisters' hair was disheveled, their faces streaked with tears, and they were kicking and struggling desperately. Stop right there. I rushed forward and rammed Chen Dali to the ground, pulling Xueting and Yuqing behind me. Brother Qin Tian, I thought I'd never see you again. Xueting clutched her younger sister and burst into tears. Chen Dali scrambled to his feet, his face twisted viciously. You little bastard. How dare you abduct my niece? You're asking to die? Zhao Chuiying hopped madly as she cursed. You abducted my niece and you still dare to hit someone? I'll fight you to the death. We came to Brother Qin Tian of our own accord. Xueting cried out. I glared at them. Xueting and I were betrothed as children, and both families acknowledged it. She's my wife. What the hell are you 2 barking here for? Chen Dali sneered. Your parents are dead, so what the hell does a childhood betrothal count for? I'm her real uncle. Since her father is gone, she has to listen to me. Hand her over now, or I'll break your legs. We'd rather die than go back. Yuqing lifted her head from Xueting's arms, her little face stubborn as hell. Zhao Chuiying started shrieking and throwing a tantrum. Ever since your parents died, we've gone without food and decent clothes to take care of you 2. And this is how you repay us? You 2 little sluts, money-losing burdens, throwing yourselves at a bastard born to a mother and raised by none. Are you trying to piss us to death? My fists clenched so hard they cracked, and my gaze turned completely cold. Who are you calling born to a mother and raised by none? I took a step forward, and Chen Dali was actually shaken by my presence and retreated half a step. I'm putting this out there today, Xueting and Yuqing. From today on, they are family to me, Qin Tian. Whoever dares lay a finger on them, I'll make him regret ever being alive. Chen Dali, don't you just want that 100 yuan bride price to arrange an exchange marriage for your son? I'm telling you, from now on the 2 of them are under my protection. Your bullshit scheme won't work. If you dare set foot in my house again, I'll go straight to the police station and report you for trafficking women and forcing marriages. And we'll see whether the police care or not. Chen Dali's face turned green, then white. Zhao Chuiying was about to throw another tantrum, but he yanked her back. He stared at me for several seconds and said sinisterly, Fine, Qin Tian, you've got guts. Just you wait. After saying that, he dragged Zhao Chuiying away through the crowd. The villagers watching in the yard looked at each other. And those bachelors, seeing that I really dared go head-to-head with Chen Dali, all shrank back and dispersed awkwardly. I closed the door and turned around. Xueting and Yuqing were still huddled together, trembling. But when they saw me walk over, Yuqing was the first to throw herself at me and hug my leg, crying softly. Xueting too stood up with red eyes and gently took my hand. Brother Qin Tian, aren't you really afraid? He really will come back for revenge. I raised my hand to wipe away the tears on her face, my voice steady. Afraid of what? I'm not even afraid of wild boars, so why would I be afraid of Chen Dali? Don't worry. As long as I'm here, no one will lay a finger on you. Xueting stared into my eyes for a long time, then suddenly threw herself into my arms and buried her face in my chest. Brother Qin Tian, we'll follow you for the rest of our lives. Yuqing squeezed over too and called out in a muffled voice, Brother-in-law, I'll listen to you from now on. I wrapped one arm around each of them, my heart as warm as if I were holding a stove inside. That night, Xueting butchered the wild boar and stewed a big pot of fragrant pork in the iron pot, filling the whole room with the smell of meat. Yuqing ate until her mouth was glistening with grease, smiling so hard her eyes curved like crescents. Watching them smile, I couldn't help but curl my lips into a smile too. The Kong was burning nice and warm. After Xueting finished clearing the bowls and chopsticks, she dawdled over, her face as red as a ripe persimmon. Brother Qin Tian, I've made the Kong ready for you. Do you want? Want what? Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. What you said in the yard this afternoon, that I'm your wife. Teach then tonight, I'll serve you. My heartbeat skipped a beat. Looking at her flushed face and sparkling eyes, I suddenly smiled. No rush. First heal up, then live life well. I, Qin Tian, am not the kind of man who takes advantage of someone when they're vulnerable. Xueting froze for a moment, and her eyes reddened again, but this time from smiling. She softly murmured in acknowledgement, climbed onto the Kong, and lay down beside me, nuzzling over like a little kitten. Yuqing had already fallen asleep at the other end of the Kong, softly snoring. It was late at night. The north wind howled outside, but inside the room it was warm and cozy. Staring at the dark ceiling, I was thinking that tomorrow I needed to haul out the rest of the wild boars and sell them for some money, so I could buy a gun. Qin definitely wouldn't let this go. Ma Biao and Lu Ergu had disappeared, and sooner or later someone would investigate. In the Shaoxing Mountains of 1980, life was hard, and people were even harsher. But now that I, Qin Tian, am here, I don't plan to live in humiliation. The two little girls on the Kong were sleeping soundly, their steady breathing like kittens purring. I closed my eyes, and the corners of my mouth slowly curled up. Tomorrow, into the mountains. Furious beyond forgiveness, Qin Tian suddenly stepped forward and kicked Zhao Chuiying to the ground. Get the hell out of here, you foul-mouthed piece of trash. You seized Chun Xueting and her sister's family property, kept them hungry every day, made them slave away taking care of your whole family, and beat and cursed them at every turn. What kind of care is that? You even want to marry Chun Xueting off to a 50-year-old lame bachelor, and even Qin Yuqing is to be married to a fool in exchange for a marriage match for your son. Are people like you even worthy of being called family? The sensible villagers all showed angry expressions when they heard this, and immediately began shouting. This is too much. They actually want to marry off their own nieces to a 50-year-old lame bachelor and a fool. They're simply inhuman. Xiaotian is right. People like that don't deserve to be family. Since they were betrothed as children, and Qin Xueting is willing to marry Xiaotian, then she belongs to our Hushan Village, and we can't let them be taken away by this kind of scum to suffer. Hearing the villagers' discussion, Zhao Chuiying, who had been kicked to the ground, burst into loud sobs, snot and tears streaming down her face. Heaven has no justice. That little bastard hit someone. Won't anybody do something? Qin angrily blocked Qin Tian's way. You still dare to hit people? I think you're really tired of living. Huzi, Biaozi, break his legs for me, and take Qin Xueting and Qin Yuqing home. I'd like to see who dares. Qin Tian stepped forward and glared at them. This is our Hushan Village, and you come here to throw your weight around. Do you really think our village has no one? At this moment, the stern-faced village secretary, Lin Hongjun, stepped out of the crowd. Xiaotian is right. You dare come to our Hushan Village and cause trouble. Do you think we're easy to bully? Seeing Lin Hongjun appear, Qin expression changed, and his tone softened a little. Qin Xueting and Qin Yuqing are my nieces. I'm taking them home. That's none of your business, is it? In those days, a village secretary still carried some authority. Holding Qin Yuqing, Qin Xueting shouted with red eyes, We don't have relatives like you. From now on, we're cutting ties. Even in death, we'll have nothing to do with each other. She was now completely disappointed in her uncle's family and wanted no further connection with them. How dare you? Qin was so angry he almost couldn't catch his breath as he shouted in fury. For some wild man, you're even abandoning your ancestors. What an unfilial descendant. Lin Hongjun drove them off forcefully. You heard her just now, didn't you? They'd rather cut ties than go with you. So get the hell out of Hushan Village right now. The villagers also all stepped forward, glaring at Qin with unfriendly expressions. Some were even holding sticks, clearly ready to strike at the slightest disagreement. Fine, so you're using numbers to bully the few. Huh? Just you wait, this isn't over. Let's go? Qin snorted angrily and could only leave with his people. Following a useless orphan like Qin Tian. Sooner or later you'll starve to death. When that time comes, don't come begging us to take you in. After throwing out a few harsh words, Qin led his family away from Hushan Village in dejection. If they didn't leave now, he was truly afraid this group would rush up and beat them senseless. Zhao Chuiying's face was full of unwillingness. Honey, are we really leaving just like this? If we don't take those two with us, what about Huzi's marriage? And we won't get the 100 yuan bride price from that lame bachelor either. Qin turned his head and cast a vicious glance at Hushan Village. There are too many people in their village. If a conflict breaks out, we won't have the advantage. Let's go home first. A useless orphan like him. There'll be plenty of time to deal with him later. Chun, who was even more furious as he cursed. Damn Qin Tian. He ruined my marriage. Sooner or later I'll kill him. In the courtyard, Qin Tian comforted Qin Xueting and Qin Yuqing, telling them to go back to their room and rest first. After going through something like this, it would cast a shadow over them for life. After comforting the two of them, Qin Tian returned to the courtyard and looked gratefully at Lin Hongjun and the other villagers. Uncle Lin, thanks to you all this time. Otherwise, Xueting and the others definitely would have been taken away. Lin Hongjun patted Qin Tian on the shoulder and declared somewhat domineeringly, our wives in Hushan Village definitely can't be bullied by them. Since Xueting is staying in your home, you should live a good life and stop fooling around like before. A grown man not being able to support his wife is no small matter. If your family has difficulties, come to me first. I don't have much else, but I can still spare you some grain. Qin Tian felt a warmth in his heart. Don't worry, Uncle Lin, I'll take good care of the family. It just so happens that I caught a small wild boar in the mountains today, so I'll share some meat with everyone. As he spoke, he lifted the small wild boar, frozen hard as a rock, and began dividing up the meat. As the saying goes, a close neighbor is better than a distant relative, so maintaining good relations with the neighbors was quite important. In the future, when he went hunting in the mountains, if anything happened to Chun Xueting and the others, someone could help. Besides, during this period the village secretary and the neighbors had helped the original owner quite a bit, so this could count as repaying a debt of gratitude. Of course, he wasn't a sucker either. Those who had mocked him with cold sarcasm, or even joined in cursing, definitely wouldn't get any. Qin Tian cut more than a dozen pieces of wild boar meat, each weighing 1 or 2 jin, all good cuts with fatty layers, and handed them one by one to the villagers who had spoken up to help just now. In these times everyone lacked oil and fat, so people preferred meat with fat on it. Although wild boar didn't taste as good as domestic pork, it was still meat after all, and no one would turn it down. The villagers politely declined a few times, but in the end accepted them with beaming smiles. These days no family had it easy, and except during holidays, ordinary people really didn't get to eat much meat. I told you Xiao Tian would surely amount to something in the future. Even wild boars can be taken down by him. And it's even a small wild boar. Look at that fat, it's delicious. You've given too much, Xiao Tian. You're a married man now too, so pay more attention to your household. Hearing the villagers' discussion, Qin Tian smiled and replied, my Xueting and her younger sister will be staying in the village from now on. So if we do anything badly, I hope everyone will be forgiving. If there's anything, just say the word, and I guarantee I'll handle it efficiently for you. The villagers who got meat patted their chests and promised. The villagers who hadn't gotten any meat also came over with ingratiating smiles, their eyes fixed on the cut fatty meat. Lin Dezhong, a widower in his 50s, bared a mouthful of big yellow teeth and pointed at the fattiest piece of wild boar meat with a smile all over his face. Xiao Tian, cut me this piece, and cut a bit more. By seniority, I'm your second granduncle. I even held you when you were little. Qin Tian casually put the wild boar meat away and said contemptuously, don't worry, when you die, I'll definitely burn a stick of incense for you. Lin Dezhong's expression changed. At his age, what he hated most was people talking about death. Pa, you little bastard, how do you talk to your elders? Hurry up and take the meat out. The others also urged, exactly, everyone still hasn't gotten any meat, so why are you putting it away? You still have the nerve to ask for meat. Qin Tian shouted back angrily. You all did plenty to help Chun Dali curse my wife, didn't you? If the village secretary weren't here, I'd beat you out with a stick. So get the hell out of my house. He had seen this bunch's true colors clearly, and they still wanted meat? No way. Lin Dezhong was scolded until his face flushed red and his breathing grew rapid, his trembling hand pointing at Qin Tian, even his lips quivering. You little bastard, you still dare curse people? I foo. Before he could finish, Lin Hongjun cut him off with a cold face. Shut up. Haven't you embarrassed yourselves enough? Get out now. Siding with outsiders from another village to bully people from your own village, and now you still have the nerve to come ask for meat. He truly couldn't stand to watch it anymore. Lin Dezhong and the others' faces flushed red, then went pale. They were burning with anger, but because of Lin Hongjuan's authority, no one dared say another word. All they could do was glare at Qin Tian with resentment, then leave the yard in dejection. That little bastard Qin Tian must have stumbled into some ridiculous stroke of luck. He definitely picked up that wild boar from someone else's trap. But the wild boar meat he brought out really was fatty. So tempting to look at that it made people jealous. Humph, what's there to be so proud of? As if I even care. Qin Tian paid no attention to those gossiping villagers and lifted the fattiest piece of wild boar meat, handing it to Lin Hongjun. Uncle Lin, thank you for looking after us during this time. Please take this piece of wild boar home and stew it with Annie. Lin Hongjun waved his hand and refused. Our family isn't short on meat. You should keep it and nourish yourselves well. Qin Tian directly stuffed the meat into Lin Hongjuan's hands. This is your nephew's filial gift to you. Our family still has nearly half of it left, more than enough to eat. This little wild boar weighed about 70 or 80 jin, and only 20 or 30 jin had been distributed to the villagers, enough for them to eat. Besides, there were 3 even bigger wild boars in the space, so the family wouldn't be lacking meat in the future. Being able to build a good relationship with the village party secretary was worth far more than the wild boar meat itself. Besides, Lin Hongjun really had helped the original owner quite a bit. Otherwise, whether the original owner could have survived was uncertain. He ought to repay that kindness. Lin Hongjun could not refuse any longer, so he accepted it with a smile. You brat, now that you have a wife, you've grown up quite a bit. Fine, I'll take this piece of meat. Go back and comfort Shiwedding and the others first. And if anything comes up, remember to come to me. After seeing Lin Hongjun off, Qin Tian put the wild boar and wild chicken in the outer room. The red-eyed and swollen Chun Shiwedding sisters came out of the west room and dropped to their knees with a thud. Brother Qin Tian, thank you for being willing to take us sisters in. I'll repay you even if I have to work like an ox or a horse. Qin Tian quickly helped the 2 of them up. Don't say things like that. You're my future wife, so of course I can't let anyone else bully you. Once I save up some money, I'll definitely give you a grand wedding and marry you properly. Chun Shiwedding's face instantly turned red all the way to her ears. She lowered her head, not daring to look at Qin Tian, while her hands kept rubbing her padded jacket. There's no need to waste that money. From now on, I belong to you. Qin Tian pulled Chun Shiwedding into his arms, a look of determination on his face. You don't need to worry about this. Just listen to me. Let's not talk about that for now. You must be starving. I caught a wild chicken and a wild boar in the mountains, and we'll stew them to eat in a bit. Only then did Chun Shiwedding notice the wild boar meat and wild chicken on the stove, and her eyes immediately widened. So much wild boar meat. How long would it take to finish eating it all? Earlier, she had been dragged around by her uncle and aunt, so she really hadn't seen the game Qin Tian had caught. Chen Yuqing looked at Qin Tian with even more admiration. Brother-in-law is amazing. He actually caught a wild boar and a wild chicken. As she spoke, she couldn't help swallowing, feeling as if drool was about to spill out. Ever since their parents passed away, they hadn't eaten meat even once. Come on, let's cook some meat. Today we'll eat our fill. Qin Tian said with a smile as he cut the wild boar meat into long strips, choosing a piece of pork belly with a good balance of fat and lean. Brother Qin Tian, you should rest first. Leave the cooking to us. Chun Shiwedding took the wild boar meat and, after a slight hesitation, cut off a small half of it. She also grabbed a pickled cabbage and started getting dinner ready. I'll tend the stove. Chen Yuqing sat by the hearth and lit the fire. Qin Tian put the meat Chun Shiwedding had cut back on the chopping board. Stir-fry it all. We have plenty of pork at home. If you weren't worried that, since they hadn't eaten anything rich for so long, too much fatty meat might upset their stomachs. Qin Tian would have wanted to cut another piece. Chun Shiwedding looked a little pained. This is already quite a lot. It's winter now, so the leftover meat can be eaten slowly. Qin Tian risked his life to hunt this wild boar. How could they waste it like this? Chen Yuqing also obediently chimed in. Sister is right. This is already a lot of meat. Qin Tian shook his head dismissively and explained in a low voice. There's plenty of wild boar meat. Besides this half of the wild boar that's left, I also hid 3 little wild boars. Altogether, they must weigh more than 300 jin. What? There are 3 more wild boars. The 2 covered their mouths, their watery big eyes wide with shock, their faces full of disbelief. More than 300 jin of wild boar meat. Even when their parents were still alive, they had never seen so much wild boar meat. To put their minds at ease, Qin Tian went into the storage room nearby, took the 3 little wild boars out of his space, and called the 2 over to look. Oh my god, it really is 3 little wild boars. The 2 kept their voices down and gasped softly in fear that others might hear. You're amazing. You went up the mountain once and brought back 4 little wild boars. In their eyes, Qin Tian seemed even taller and greater, and this also filled them with hope for the future. Being stared at in admiration by 2 beauties put Qin Tian in a very good mood. He directly stir-fried all of that wild boar meat. Look how skinny you are. You need to build yourselves up. This time, the 2 didn't object again, and in high spirits they returned to the outer room to prepare dinner. Qin Tian cut all the little wild boars into meat strips of more than 2 jin each. And after removing the boar heads and bones, there were over 150 jin of pure meat. He picked out more than 10 jin of the fattiest pork to render into lard, and separated another 120 plus jin of wild boar meat to put in his space, planning to sell it. The remaining wild boar meat and pig bones, including the cleaned offal, were all put into the large vat outside the storage room to freeze. This was the Northeast's natural refrigerator. something almost every household had. In winter, anything they couldn't finish eating would be frozen in it. Qin Tian was quite a good cook, and soon a big basin full of braised pork belly with pickled cabbage was set on the Kong table. With cornmeal cakes on the side, the three of them ate till their mouths were glistening with grease, their faces filled with happy smiles. The only flaw was that the cornmeal cakes were too coarse and scratched the throat going down. Used to the fine white flour of later times, Qin Tian really wasn't used to the cornmeal of this era. Qin Tian decided that tomorrow he would go into town and sell the 120-plus gene of wild boar meat in his space, and buy some white flour to eat. These days, white flour still tasted better. Qin Tian and Qin Yuqing, however, didn't feel much about it. They had long since gotten used to it. Besides, with such fragrant pork, how could they care about anything else? Brother Qin Tian, eat some more. This meat is so fragrant. Even while eating, Qin Tian didn't forget to pick some meat for Qin Tian. Qin Yuqing also looked at Qin Tian with a face full of gratitude. Brother-in-law, you're so good, giving us so much meat to eat. They knew very well that being able to eat meat at all was entirely thanks to Qin Tian. This is hardly any meat. From now on, we'll have more meat than we can finish every day. Qin Tian promised confidently. The big basin of meat and vegetables was eaten clean by the three of them, especially Qin Tian, who ate the most. After all, their bodies were badly lacking in fat and nourishment, so everyone had a pretty big appetite. After the meal, Qin Tian lit a fire in the yard and singed the bristles off the wild boar's head, trotters, and tail. This was all meat, so it couldn't be wasted. After Qin Tian and Qin Yuqing washed the pots and bowls, they put the fat Jiang Cheng had set aside into the pot to render lard. Although wild boars have less fat than domestic pigs, it still produced quite a bit of oil. This kind of animal fat was nothing like ordinary cooking oil. Adding a little when stir-frying vegetables made them incredibly fragrant. After rendering the oil, the three of them dipped some of the leftover cracklings in seasoning and ate them crunchily, saving the rest to store as snacks. It got dark early in winter, and by the time they finished tidying everything up, night had already fallen. Qin Tian set down a basin of hot water on the floor. Brother Qin Tian, you must be exhausted from going up the mountain today. Come soak your feet. Without waiting for Qin Tian to refuse, she grabbed his foot, took off his sock, and helped wash his feet. The warm water not only warmed his feet, but also warmed his heart. Qin Tian unconsciously reached out with both hands and cupped Qin Tian's face. Tian, you're so beautiful. Looking at Qin Tian's aggressive gaze, Qin Tian's face instantly turned red, and her heart began to pound rapidly. Qin Tian's heavy breathing fell on her face, and Qin Tian couldn't help closing her eyes, her lips trembling slightly, allowing Qin Tian to hold her face as he slowly leaned closer. The scent coming from Qin Tian reached his nose, and Qin Tian's breathing grew even heavier as his body unconsciously leaned forward too. Just as the two of them had their eyes closed and were about to kiss, there was a clang, and Qin Tian's foot slipped, nearly kicking over the wash basin. The two of them instantly came to their senses and sprang apart as if electrocuted, both blushing furiously and avoiding each other's eyes. Qin Tian bent down in a fluster, rubbing his feet non-stop with both hands. It's getting late. You should get some rest early. I can wash by myself. Qin Tian stood up with a red face. After hesitating for a moment, she suddenly bent down and kissed Qin Tian on the cheek. Before Qin Tian could react, Qin Tian shyly turned and left. She didn't even notice that she had knocked over a stool, leaving behind only a soft whisper lingering in Qin Tian's ear. Brother Qin Tian, you should rest early too. I'll go back first. Qin Tian touched the lingering warmth on his cheek, then slapped his foot, his face full of regret. Choking at the critical moment, you're absolutely useless. Such a great opportunity, and you ruined it just like that. Qin Tian quickly finished washing his feet, shuffled into his shoes, and carried the wash basin out of the room. Qin Tian, who was talking with her younger sister, shyly turned her head away, not daring to look at Qin Tian. Qin Tian gave a light cough, poured out the hot water outside, and set the wash basin on the ground. The weather is pretty cold, so make sure to keep your blankets over you when you sleep tonight. After a simple reminder, Qin Tian went into the east room and slipped under the warm covers. He could vaguely hear the conversation between Qin Tian and Qin Yuqing. Sis, why is your face so red? Are you feeling unwell? I'm fine. Maybe it's just that the stove in the room is burning a bit too hot. Hurry back and go to sleep. Sis, why don't you sleep with brother-in-law? I can sleep by myself. You little brat, what are you saying? I'll beat you to death. Sis, I was wrong. Please spare me. Nothing happened through the night. When Qin Tian woke up, it was still not light yet. The kerosene lamp in the outer room was already lit, and Qin Tian was preparing breakfast. It's freezing out. You don't need to get up so early. I can just eat something simple. Qin Tian felt a warmth in his heart, but he still shook his head and tried to persuade her. Qin Tian yawned and set the steaming hot dishes on the Kong table. How could that do? You're heading into the city so early, and it's very cold outside. Eat something hot to warm yourself up. There was steaming hot corn grits porridge, wild boar stewed with potatoes, with more meat than potatoes, plus a plate of pickles and cornmeal buns. Qin Tian sat cross-legged on the Kong and invited Qin Tian to join him. There's so much meat, I can't finish it all myself. Come eat with me. Qin Tian pointed at the stove. There's still some in the pot. I'll wait and eat with Yuqing when she wakes up. Qin Tian stood up suspiciously, shuffling in his shoes, and despite Qin Tian's attempts to stop him, lifted the pot lid. There really was food inside, but it was mostly potatoes, with only a few slices of wild boar. Just these few pieces of meat won't do. You girls are still growing and need to eat more meat. Qin Tian took the dish from the Kong table and poured it back into the pot. Be good. From now on, if there's meat, we'll eat it together. Don't separate it out on purpose anymore. You're the mistress of the house. How can you treat yourself so harshly? Qin Tian's pretty face flushed slightly, and she nodded to show she understood, not arguing further. Qin Tian found the family sled, pretended to take out the wild boar meat from the shed, packed it into a snakeskin bag, and placed it on the sled. The snow on the road hadn't melted yet, and something weighing over 100 jin could still be dragged with the sled. After being transformed by the jade gourd, Qin Tian's body was much stronger than before. After greeting Qin Tian, Qin Tian pulled the sled and headed out of the village. Fortunately, it was still early, and there was basically no one in the village. He pulled the sled all the way to the deserted woods, and after confirming that no one was around, Qin Tian put everything into his space, then jogged all the way toward the county town. Hushan Village was about 20 li from the county town, and Qin Tian reached the outskirts after walking for an hour and a half. Finding an empty corner, Qin Tian took out the sled and the wild boar meat and went to the market tucked away in a corner of the old town. With the start of reform and opening up, state policies had gradually relaxed, and the county authorities were already turning a blind eye to the buying and selling of agricultural sideline products. As long as you weren't especially unlucky and didn't run into a crackdown case, there was basically no problem. By the time Qin Tian arrived at the market, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Many items had been set out along both sides of the road, selling flour, tickets, eggs, meat, and all sorts of other things. Qin Tian found an empty spot, took out the wild boar meat from the snakeskin bag, and laid it out on the sled. In those days, not many city people could eat meat often, since buying meat required ration coupons. Once you'd used up your allotment, if you wanted more meat, you'd have to find your own way. Qin Tian had just put out the wild boar meat when a burly man of about 30, wearing a dark blue cotton-padded jacket, squatted down and asked the price. Comrade, this is wild boar meat, right? What's the price? Qin Tian gave a thumbs up. Big brother, you've got a sharp eye. It really is wild boar meat, and it's from a young yellow-haired boar, so it's very tender. It was slaughtered today. Just look at this meat. Nice and fatty, and each piece weighs more than 2 jin. If you really want it, just give me 0.8 yuan, and no coupon is needed. This price wasn't high at all. Pork was about 0.8 yuan per jin now, and you still needed a coupon. Wild boar meat also cost 0.3 to 0.4 yuan. What he was selling was the better quality, young yellow-haired boar meat. Even if he sold it for 0.5 yuan per jin, someone would definitely buy it. This wild boar meat had been stored in the space most of the time, so it was very fresh. The burly man picked up the wild boar meat and weighed it in his hand, nodding in satisfaction. The weight is right, and the meat quality is good too. It really does look like it was just slaughtered last night. Give me 20 yuan's worth. Qin Tian immediately broke into a broad smile. This was a big customer. Big brother, take your pick. It comes to 16 yuan total. The burly man did not refuse. He counted out 16 yuan from his pocket and handed it to Qin Tian. Then he opened the snakeskin sack he had brought and picked out 20 fairly fatty pieces of wild boar meat. After choosing the wild boar meat, he did not hurry to leave and asked in a low voice, Comrade, you look like a hunter. Besides wild boar meat, do you have hazel grouse, roe deer, or deer and the like? Qin Tian carefully put away the money, his heart stirring slightly. This man seemed to have a rather unusual background. Ordinary people would not be willing to spend over a dozen yuan on meat, let alone hazel grouse, roe deer, and deer, which were even more expensive. At the current market rate, one hazel grouse would cost at least 3 or 4 yuan, and deer and roe deer were also more expensive than pork. I do have 2 pheasants at home, but nothing else for now. If you're not in a hurry, big brother, the next time I go into the mountains I can get a few hazel grouse or roe deer. He was quite confident in his hunting skills. Without a gun, he could not get deer, but there was still hope for hazel grouse and silly roe deer. The burly man replied, "If you can get them, I'll buy them all. The price won't disappoint you." The smile on Qin Tian's face grew even brighter. "No problem. If I bring hazel grouse or roe deer, how do I find you? I come here every morning. We can meet at the market then." The burly man did not say much more, and after making a brief verbal agreement, he left carrying the meat. Watching the burly man's departing back, Qin Tian also made up his mind to get a few hazel grouse and roe deer the next time he had a chance to go into the mountains. Whether he was bluffing or not, there would definitely be no worry about selling these if he caught them. Even yellow-haired wild boar was very popular at the market, especially since the burly man had just bought so much, which invisibly served as an advertisement for Qin Tian's wild boar meat. Several young men dressed like workers curiously came over and asked about the price of the wild boar meat. In those days, workers' wages were still quite good, at least 20 or 30. For ordinary people, that was not a small amount, and they could definitely afford meat. Qin Tian greeted them warmly. "Take a look, brothers, at this wild boar meat. Yellow-haired wild boar, very fresh. Each piece is 2 jade, only 80 cents, no ration ticket needed. Take it home and stew it simply, and it'll definitely be delicious." Everyone looked at the wild boar meat on the sled and imagined the aroma after it was stewed. They were practically drooling. They had not eaten meat for a long time either. Feeling the money in their pockets, they gritted their teeth and picked out a fairly fatty piece of wild boar meat. He sold another 5 pieces of wild boar meat, bringing in 4 yuan, and the corners of Qin Tian's mouth lifted. Despite the cold weather, which had frozen his whole body and left his feet almost numb, his heart was burning with excitement. In later times, 20 yuan might only be enough for one meal. But in this era, it was already no small sum. In those days, land had not yet been contracted to individual households, and ordinary rural families could work hard all year long and still not necessarily earn that much, with some even ending up in debt. And that was not all. Quite a few more people gathered around wanting to buy meat. An auntie dressed rather neatly frowned and bargained. 80 cents for 2 jade of wild boar meat is a bit expensive. Other people sell wild boar meat for only 30 cents a jade, and theirs is even fattier than yours. Qin Tian smiled and shook his head. This price is already very low. Meat at 30 cents a jade is definitely from a male wild boar. The taste is far worse than yellow-haired wild boar, and it's impossible for it to be fattier than the meat I'm selling. Before setting up his stall, he had already walked around the market once. Even among those selling domestic pork, most of it was lean meat. The auntie was somewhat unwilling to give up and questioned again. "You don't even have a scale here. Can this piece of meat really weigh 2 jade? Lower the price a bit more, 60 cents a piece, and I won't argue about the weight." The people gathered around who were preparing to buy meat also showed a bit of doubt, and all began to hesitate. Qin Tian confidently lifted a piece of wild boar meat. "Everyone, rest assured, every piece of wild boar meat is definitely over 2 jade. If any piece is under 2 jade, I'll compensate you with 2 pieces." Words alone weren't enough, so Qin Tian borrowed a scale from the uncle selling grain nearby. He weighed several pieces in a row, and all of them were over 2 jade, with a few even exceeding it by 1 liang. Only then did the crowd put their doubts to rest and step forward to buy. They could tell that the wild boar meat Qin Tian was selling was indeed fattier, unlike some meat sellers who deliberately trim off the fat before selling it. Seeing this, the haggling aunt stamped her foot in frustration. Muttering under her breath, she still took out the money and bought a piece. Wild boar meat this good was indeed rare. There were quite a few well-off people in the old district. In just over an hour, the wild boar meat Qin Tian had brought was almost sold out, with only the last 2 pieces left. By this time, the sky had fully brightened. Qin Tian stomped his feet and rubbed his hands as he looked toward the uncle selling grain next to him. There were 2 sacks laid out in front of him, containing cornmeal and white flour respectively. The cornmeal had sold quite a bit, but the white flour had barely moved. "Uncle, how much is the white flour per jade?" 20 cents a jade, no ration coupons needed, and it's all top-quality white flour. Hearing this price, Qin Tian's brows furrowed slightly. No wonder hardly anyone was buying it. It was quite a bit more expensive than the white flour at the state-run grain and oil store. The state-run store only charged 17 cents a jade, a difference of 3 cents, and ordinary people were really reluctant to spend that much. Qin Tian didn't haggle either. He pointed at the wild boar meat beside him and asked, "Uncle, can I trade wild boar meat for your flour?" The uncle looked somewhat tempted as he glanced at the pork on Qin Tian's sled. These days, every household was short on meat. Sure, I can give you 8 jin of white flour in exchange. Look at this scale, a full 8 jin. I'll even throw in a small sack to hold the flour. Qin Tian then pulled out a thick stack of small denomination bills and handed it over. Uncle, here's 2 yuan. Weigh out another 10 jin of white flour for me. Still buying more. The uncle happily took the bills and counted them twice. After confirming there was no mistake, he weighed out another 10 jin of white flour for Qin Tian. 18 jin of white flour was enough for the 3 of them to eat for quite a while. Qin Tian put the white flour and the wild boar meat onto the sled and headed toward the supply and marketing cooperative with the huge sum of over 40 yuan. Since he had made money, he naturally had to spend some, especially since there was still a future wife at home. The supply and marketing cooperative in the old district wasn't very big, covering roughly 400 or 500 square meters. It was an ordinary brick and tile house. Inside, it was divided into sections for grain, for purchasing, hardware, medicinal herb purchasing, and so on. Qin Tian left the sled in a visible spot by the entrance, then turned and went into the supply and marketing cooperative. Nowadays, many places required ration coupons, and Qin Tian didn't have any. He also didn't see any coupon scalpers at the entrance, so he could only choose things that didn't require coupons. Canned goods didn't require coupons and cost 1.5 yuan a bottle. In this era, that counted as a luxury item, so Qin Tian bought 2 bottles. Malted milk essence didn't require coupons and cost 2.8 yuan a can, making it even more expensive. It was even more of a luxury than canned goods. Thinking of how frail the Chen Shuling sisters looked, Qin Tian bought 2 cans as well. He also wanted to buy some cloth to make a new outfit for Chen Shuling, but unfortunately, he didn't have any cloth coupons, so he could only wait until next time when he got some before coming back to buy it. Just as Qin Tian was about to pay, he caught sight of the fact that the supply and marketing cooperative also sold guns. Price tags for several models were posted on the counter. A brand new Type 56 semi-automatic rifle cost 1,100 yuan. Even a used one cost 900 yuan. This was truly a godly tool for hunting. The magazine could hold 10 rounds, and it could fire either single shots or in rapid succession. If he had a gun like this, he could have kept that whole group of wild boars he had run into before. But the price was simply too high, and with his empty pockets he couldn't afford it. There were also other options, like the water bead rifle, that is, the Mosinagate. Even a used one cost 600 yuan. As for double-barreled shotguns and single-barreled shotguns, even the cheapest one cost nearly 200 yuan. Qin Tian sighed and decided he should just keep making money. He couldn't even afford a single gun. After paying 8 yuan and 6 mao, Qin Tian left the supply and marketing cooperative carrying the canned food and malted milk. With the little over 30 yuan he had left in his pocket, Qin Tian pulled the sled and prepared to head home. After passing through a few narrow alleys and making sure no one was around, Qin Tian directly stored the sled and everything he had bought into his space, and headed home unburdened. Otherwise, dragging the sled for over an hour would have been quite exhausting. Not long after Qin Tian left the alley, 2 shifty-eyed young men, one fat and one thin, slipped into it. Not seeing anyone, they stomped their feet in annoyance. Damn it, how did we lose him? We clearly saw him pulling the sled into this alley, so how could he just vanish? That kid sold quite a bit of meat at the market and even went to the supply and marketing cooperative. He's definitely got a lot of money on him. The short, chubby young man raised his hand and slapped the skinny guy beside him. You damn beanpole. You just had to take a shit right then. Now we can't find him, can we? Otherwise, we definitely could have made a score today. The skinny guy nicknamed Beanpole gave an awkward grin. When you gotta go, you can't hold it in. I couldn't exactly crap my pants, could I? Brother Fat, what do we do next? We haven't run into a good target in days. The short, chubby young man waved his hand. Forget it if we lost him. Anyway, a friend in Hushan Village is treating us to drinks at noon. He said he wants us to rough someone up, and if it works out, we can get 50 yuan. Beanpole licked his lips and showed a hint of a smile. Drinks are great. I like drinking best. Beating people up is our specialty too, so there's no way this 50 yuan is slipping away. Crunching through the snow, Qin Tian walked all the way into the mountain forest around Hushan Village. After looking around to make sure no one was there, he took the sled and the things he had bought out of his space, humming a little tune as he headed home. Seeing Qin Tian return, the Chen sisters, who were splitting firewood, hurried over to greet him. Seeing the frost clinging even to Qin Tian's eyebrows, Chen Shueting felt a surge of heartache. You must be freezing, brother Qin Tian. Hurry inside and warm up. The stove is lit in the room. Yuqing, get some warm water ready for your brother-in-law, so he can soak his feet. It really isn't easy making a trip like this in such freezing weather. Got it. Qin Yuqing answered and darted into the house to prepare the foot-washing water. Qin Tian rubbed his hands and then his nearly frozen face. He took out the canned food and malted milk from the sled and handed them to Qin Shueting. I bought 2 cans and some malted milk. Take them inside first, open them up, and have a taste with Yuqing. There's also more than 10 jin of white flour, so from now on, we'll be eating white flour steamed buns. Hearing that Qin Tian was always thinking of them, Qin Shueting felt warmth in her heart. But when she thought of the price of canned food and malted milk, her face filled with distress again. Why buy this stuff? It's so expensive. We haven't even finished the cornmeal at home yet, and white flour is so pricey. What kind of family eats it every day? Even when her parents were still alive, they rarely ate white flour. At most, they would occasionally have steamed buns made from a mix of cornmeal and white flour. As for canned food, that was something they might buy only during holidays or festivals. And as for malted milk, she had never even seen it before. Making money was so hard in those days that no one was willing to spend freely. Qin Tian put the sled away and carried the white flour into the house. A wave of warmth hit him, making his face itch a little. It didn't cost that much. You too are frail, so you need to nourish yourselves properly. Otherwise, what if you get sick in this freezing weather? I sold all the wild boar meat on this trip into town and still had a little over 30 yuan left. Our lives are definitely going to get better from now on, so there's no need to pinch pennies and be reluctant to eat anything good. As he spoke, Qin Tian put the bag of flour in the cabinet and took a thick wad of money out of his pocket, placing it on the table. Qin Shueting had just put away the canned food and malted milk when she suddenly whipped her head around, her eyes wide as saucers. Goodness, more than 30 yuan. Did it really sell for that much? Qin Yuqing, who had come over carrying a basin of water, was also startled by the money on the table. This was the first time in her life she had seen so much money. So much money, brother-in-law. Is all of this from selling pork? That's amazing. Qin Tian pushed the money toward Qin Shueting. Shueting, put the money away and save it well. Our days will definitely keep getting better and better. As he spoke, Qin Tian tested the water temperature. It was just right, so he sat down, took off his shoes and socks, and soaked his feet. His cotton rubber shoes were lined with snow, and his feet were so cold they were almost numb. Qin Shueting shook her head like a rattle drum. That's so much money. You should keep it. I wouldn't feel at ease holding it. Not just Qin Yuqing. Even she herself had never seen so much money before. And if she had to keep it, she probably wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. Qin Tian nodded. Fine, I'll hold on to it for now. If you need money, just ask me. I'll leave you a few yuan for daily expenses. Qin Tian counted out 5 yuan in small bills and handed them to Qin Shueting. He put the rest into a small cloth pouch and stored it in his space. More than 30 yuan was no small amount, and it was safer kept in his space. After soaking for a few minutes, Qin Tian felt his feet gradually recover. He dried them, changed into another pair of shoes, and stood up to go pour out the water. Brother-in-law, just rest. I can pour it out. Qin Yuqing stopped Qin Tian and, without waiting for him to refuse, picked up the basin and headed outside. Qin Tian shook his head helplessly and had no choice but to sit back down on the Kong. I can do this myself. You don't have to be so polite. You're making me feel like some landlord. Qin Shueting smiled and sat down beside Qin Tian, helping massage his feet. You're working so hard out there to earn money, so you definitely shouldn't have to worry about things at home too. Get some sleep first, brother Qin Tian. Yuqing and I will call you when the meal is ready. Qin Tian stretched lazily, feeling the warmth coming from his feet. And he really was a bit tired. All right then, stew the pheasant for lunch, and fry some pork too. I'll get some sleep first. I got up before dawn this morning and walked back and forth for more than 3 hours. I really am exhausted. By the time he woke up, it was already past noon, and the Chun sisters had already prepared lunch. Fragrant pheasant stewed with dried mushrooms and pork stewed with cabbage. With mixed grain steamed buns as the staple, don't even mention how delicious it smelled. The 3 of them ate with great gusto, and the Kong table was soon piled with chicken bones. Qin Tian loosened his belt and gave a thumbs up. Shueting's cooking is really good. This tastes even better than the state-run restaurant. Qin Yuqing gnawed on a chicken foot and nodded in agreement. My sister's cooking is always delicious. Back when we were in the village, people would even specifically ask my sister to help cook. I wouldn't dare compare it to a state-run restaurant. But if you like it, brother Qin Tian, I'll cook for you every day from now on. Being recognized by Qin Tian made her very happy as well. Soon both basins of food were nearly empty, and all 3 of them had round, full bellies. The Qin sisters cleaned up the dishes, while Qin Tian lay on the Kong, too comfortable to want to move. After the 2 of them finished washing the pots and bowls, Qin Tian opened the can and poured it into a bowl. Come have some canned yellow peaches and see how they taste. Canned goods from the Northeast were quite famous, especially in those days, when there wasn't any of that artificial junk. One bite was crisp and sweet, so sweet it went straight to the heart. Chen Xueting and Chen Yuqing were so happy their eyes narrowed into crescents. Such delicious canned fruit. After more than a year without it, it was still just as sweet. Seeing how happy the two of them were made Qin Tian happy too. There will be canned food, and in the future there will be everything. After finishing the canned yellow peaches, Qin Tian stretched lazily and got down from the calm, continuing to prepare to head into the mountains. Earning 30 or 40 a day made the hardship worth it. With a body transformed by the jade gourd, he could handle it too. Chen Xueting took out the metal lunchbox she had prepared in advance and handed it to Qin Tian. Inside was the chicken and pork stewed at noon. Eat it if you get hungry in the mountains. The mountains are very dangerous, so you must pay attention to your safety. Yuqing and I will be waiting for you to come back safely. Don't worry, I'll be careful. Holding the still warm lunchbox, Qin Tian felt warm inside as well. He hadn't expected Chen Xueting to prepare food for him in advance. Qin Tian took out the military canteen from home and filled it with hot water, then put the lunchbox and the military canteen into the space. So there was no need to worry about them freezing. Once everything was ready, he put on his cotton hat, tied up his trouser legs, and walked out the door carrying his bow, arrows, and hunting knife. Today he planned to go take a look around Pheasant Ridge, where there were quite a lot of pheasants and hazel grouse. If he was lucky, he might bag a few more. Pheasant Ridge was about a little over an hour's walk from Hushan Village, and he could make it back at night. Just after Qin Tian left the village, he saw Lin Daizhong sneaking out of the mountains. Hidden in his arms was a dead wild rabbit, and from the thin wire on its leg, it was clear it had been caught with a snare. When he saw Qin Tian coming out of the village, the startled Lin Daizhong hurriedly hid the rabbit in a panic. "You little bastard, what are you looking at? You scared the hell out of me. You little bastard, nobody raised right. You don't even know to greet your second uncle when you see him. You lured a young girl over and hid her in your house, ruining her reputation. You're rotten to the core." Qin Tian's eyes turned cold, and he gripped the longbow tightly with both hands, turning to look at Lin Daizhong. "If you dare curse me one more time, I'll kill you." Seeing the ferocious look in Qin Tian's eyes, Lin Daizhong's heart jolted, and he couldn't help taking 2 steps back. "Damn it, I got scared by this piece of trash. What a disgrace." Lin Daizhong cursed inwardly, feeling utterly stifled. Ever since Qin Tian's parents died, the timid Qin Tian had basically become someone anyone in the village could bully. If word got out that he had been scared into backing away by a single look from Qin Tian, people would laugh their heads off. What does this little bastard think he's doing? So what if I'm cursing you? You really think having the village party secretary backing you and finding yourself 2 little wives has made you tough, huh? Using a bow and arrow to scare me? Come on then, if you've got the guts, shoot right here. Lin Daizhong tapped his own chest and looked at Qin Tian with disdain. Even if Qin Tian had 10 times the courage, he still didn't believe Qin Tian would dare make a move. With Qin Tian's personality of never fighting back when hit and never talking back when cursed, he deserved to be bullied. With a whoosh, Lin Daizhong only felt his vision blur, and a burning pain shot through his ear. He reached up to touch it and found his hand covered in blood, and he was so frightened that he fell to the ground. Looking at Qin Tian lowering his bow, Lin Daizhong was shocked and furious. "Damn, are you crazy? You really dared to shoot. If it had been a little off, it would have killed me. Didn't you tell me to shoot? I'm granting your wish." Qin Tian snorted coldly and knocked another arrow. This arrow shot directly between Lin Daizhong's spread legs, brushing past his cotton pants before sinking into the snow. Cold sweat instantly broke out all over Lin Daizhong, covering his crotch with terrified eyes. He could even feel warmth spreading through his pants. He had wet himself from fright. Just a tiny bit more, and he wouldn't have been a man for the rest of his life. Though he was an old widower, that didn't mean he didn't need that thing. He still had to help the widow in the next village relieve her loneliness. Before he could react, Qin Tian planted a foot on Lin Daizhong's chest, drew his hunting knife, pried open his padded trousers, and set it at the base of his thigh. "This time, I'll count it as a warning. If I hear you spewing shit again, I'll cut you up with 1 slash." Feeling the icy touch coming from his thigh, Lin Daizhong didn't dare move in the slightest and swallowed hard. I won't. Curse you again. Hurry and take the knife away. This isn't something to joke about." Qin Tian pressed close to his ear and said coldly, "You'd better remember what you said, or I'll butcher you tonight and throw you into the mountains, and no one will ever know." "I won't do it again, absolutely not." Lin Daizhong was on the verge of tears. Was this still the Qin Tian he used to bully all the time? Could getting a wife really change a man this much? Seeing the wet patch on the padded trousers, Qin Tian pulled out the hunting knife in disgust, wiped it on him, then turned and left. Lin Dezhong took several minutes to recover before shakily pulling up his padded trousers and looking venomously in the direction Qin Tian had left. Damn it, that useless Qin Tian scared me so badly I pissed my pants. How am I supposed to face anyone if this gets out? Damn, just you wait. Sooner or later I'll make you pay. Better yet, may you run into a pack of wolves or a herd of wild boars on the mountain and die up there. Before he could leave, several figures from the village came walking over. In weather this cold, second Uncle Lin isn't staying warm on the calm, but standing here holding up his pants. What are you doing? Nothing. Just wandering around the mountain, getting ready to take a piss. I'm heading back now. Lin Dezhong didn't dare stay any longer. Bent over, he grabbed his trousers and the wild rabbit and ran toward the village, afraid others would see how pathetic he looked. Watching Lin Dezhong's retreating back, everyone couldn't help showing a bit of confusion. Second Uncle Lin has a footprint on his clothes. Don't tell me someone beat him up? Hard to say. He loves taking advantage of people, so maybe he offended someone. I think his pants are even wet. Don't tell me he pissed himself. When I went out, I saw Qin Tian heading up the mountain. Could it have been him? Stop talking nonsense. Qin Tian is even softer than a woman. He's always the one getting bullied by others. How would he have the guts to bully anyone? That wimp Qin Tian is pretty lucky, hiding two pretty girls at home. Lucky my ass. I'd say he's not far from death. I heard that hoodlum Chen Dali is already looking for people to deal with him. In the mountain forest, Qin Tian wrapped his clothes tighter and carefully trudged through the snow, one deep step and one shallow step. After walking for more than half an hour, he still hadn't seen any sign of prey. In the cold winter weather, animals rarely came out and showed themselves. Only when he reached a pine grove did Qin Tian finally spot something. In the weeds beneath the pines, a flock of sand partridges were hopping around and pecking for food. There were at least a dozen of the plump little birds. Qin Tian crouched and carefully crept closer, stopping beside a pine tree 10 meters away, then drew his bow and aimed at the fattest one. With a whoosh, the arrow shot out, and the sand partridge dropped onto the snow before it could even react. The startled birds all flew up in fright, but they weren't good flyers, and after not going far, they hid in the grass again. Qin Tian picked up the dead sand partridge, put it into his space, and chased after them with bow and arrow in hand. Only after killing 8 sand partridges in a row did Qin Tian stop. The remaining birds had already vanished without a trace. He slit their throats one by one to bleed them out. In a good mood, Qin Tian hummed a little tune and continued toward Pheasant Ridge. Sand partridges don't have much meat on them. Each one only yields about half a gene even after being killed. But it tastes quite good too. At the market, a sand grouse can sell for 30 or 40 cents, and if you get enough of them, it adds up to a decent sum. After walking a few more steps, Qin Tian spotted some rabbit tracks in the snow. A hint of delight appeared on Qin Tian's face. The tracks looked freshly made, and catching a rabbit would be nice too. He followed the rabbit tracks all the way, and only after a few minutes did Qin Tian finally discover its whereabouts. He saw it constantly lifting its head to look around, extremely alert. Qin Tian slowed his breathing, crouched low against the grass, and carefully crept closer. Only when he was 10 meters from the hare did he stop. He raised his bow, and just as the hare was about to leap away, he suddenly let go. Whoosh! The arrow flew from the bowstring and struck the leaping hare squarely in the neck, pinning it to the snow. Qin Tian quickly took a couple of steps forward and picked up the hare. It weighed about 2 or 3 jin, not too heavy. But rabbit fur was also valuable and could sell for several yuan at the supply and marketing cooperative. After cutting its throat and draining the blood, the sand grouse in his space had some company. Hares reproduced quickly, and Qin Tian ran into more than 10 of them along the way. But they were simply far too wary. So even though he had already been very careful, he only managed to hunt 5. He did, however, come across quite a few sand grouse and hunted another 7, plus 2 pheasants. Unfortunately, the hazel grouse he most wanted to hunt. He didn't encounter even a single one. Only after walking all the way to Pheasant Ridge did the parched Qin Tian find a sheltered mountainside to rest for a while. He took out his military canteen and drank a couple of mouthfuls of water, and the warm water made his body feel several degrees warmer. The space was still the most reliable. After being stored for so long, there wasn't the slightest change. Just as he had rested for a few minutes and was about to get up and leave, he vaguely heard voices talking in the mountain forest. "Brother, you stole the old uncle's bolt-action rifle from his house. Won't you get beaten when we go back? What are you scared of?" If we can bring back a wild boar, who knows how much old uncle will praise us. But are there really wild boars nearby? I heard there are wolves in the mountains too. If we run into one, wouldn't that be too dangerous? We've never gone up the mountain to hunt before. That useless Qin Tian didn't even have a gun, and he still dared to hunt wild boars on his first trip up the mountain. We've got guns, so we'll definitely manage. Hearing his own name, Qin Tian poked his head out and looked in the direction the voices were coming from. He saw two heavily bundled up young men holding guns and glancing around wildly. They were none other than Qin Dali's two sons, Qin Hu and Qin Biao. Pheasant Ridge was relatively close to Qinjiatin, so he had thought he might run into people from Qinjiatin. He just hadn't expected the ones he'd meet to be the brothers Qin Hu and Qin Biao. They really were bold, actually daring to steal the family gun and sneak out to hunt. Qin Tian didn't dare show himself either. Given their current conflict, if they saw him, they might just shoot him dead with one shot. But with two novices hunting in the mountains, he could trail behind them and maybe pick up some leftovers. Perhaps he might even get an unexpected gain. Along the way, he could also find a chance to mess with them and vent some anger for Qin Shueting and Qin Yuqing. Qin Tian followed far behind Qin Hu and Qin Biao, watching them blunder foolishly through the forest. Beginners really did have good luck. After only a little more than 10 minutes, they came across a flock of hazel grouse. Qin Hu excitedly hid under a pine tree. See, I told you we'd definitely find something if we came out. With so many hazel grouse, if we take them back and make soup, it'll definitely taste incredibly fresh. Qin Biao nodded nonstop, practically drooling. I like hazel grouse soup the most, but hazel grouse aren't very big. Can you even hit them? Who are you looking down on? I handled guns plenty of times at old uncle's house. Qin Hu confidently raised his gun, aimed at the flock of hazel grouse, and pulled the trigger. Bang! At the sound of the shot, the startled hazel grouse flapped away into the distance, but unfortunately, not a single one fell. Qin Biao asked blankly, "Brother, your marksmanship really isn't that great. You didn't hit a single one. Damn, just bad luck. Chase them. Just wait and see if I don't bring them down." Qin Hu's old face flushed red, and he took off after the departing flying dragons. When the flying dragons landed again in the snowy grass, Qin Hu, panting heavily, raised his gun once more. Another gunshot rang out, and the flock of flying dragons scattered in all directions, with only a few feathers falling. The two of them were instantly dumbfounded. Another miss. Looking at the vanished flock, the furious Qin Hu let out an angry snort. Damn it, I'm not chasing them anymore. The flying dragons are too small. Let's go look for wild boars. Qin Biao looked longingly in the direction the flying dragons had disappeared, swallowing hard. He really wanted to drink flying dragon soup. Qin Tian, who had been following behind the two, curled his lips into a slight smile, quietly avoided them, and chased after the flying dragons in the direction they had gone. After walking for a few minutes, Qin Tian caught up with the flock. If you don't have the skill, then I'll just have to take them. Qin Tian raised his bow and carefully aimed at a flying dragon, shooting straight through one's neck. As the flock took fright and flew off, Qin Tian didn't bother aiming and shot another arrow. This arrow was a little less accurate and struck a flying dragon in the body. Qin Tian picked up the dying flying dragons one by one and continued the chase. The flying dragon's flying ability wasn't all that great either, and Qin Tian, sprinting all the way, quickly caught up. After chasing for several more minutes, Qin Tian harvested another 3 flying dragons. Happily putting away the 5 flying dragons, Qin Tian carried his bow and arrows and went after the Hu brothers again. These two really were lucky stars. He had searched for most of the day without running into any flying dragons. But not long after following them, he had gotten so many. The gunshots ringing out again from the distant forest guided Qin Tian in the right direction, and more than 10 minutes later, he caught up with the two. At this moment, their expressions looked a bit ugly, and their hands were still completely empty, clearly showing they hadn't gotten any prey. "Brother, how about we head back down the mountain? You couldn't even hit pheasants from that close. How are we supposed to hunt?" Qin Biao sat on the snow somewhat helplessly. Qin Hu's face was red with embarrassment like a monkey's backside, and he shouted in self-defense. "The weather in the mountains is too cold. I'm just not used to it. You know that. My marksmanship isn't normally this bad. It's not dark yet. We'll keep looking around. No matter what, I've got to shoot at least one piece of prey today." He had finally managed to steal a gun from his old uncle's house. So how could he be willing to go back without hitting anything? Qin Biao let out a long sigh and could only follow Qin Hu deeper into the forest. There was still plenty of game on Pheasant Ridge, especially pheasants, which were the most numerous. After walking for more than 10 minutes, the two spotted several pheasants again. This time Qin Hu was careful. He first rubbed his hands together, and after they had warmed up, He raised his gun again, aimed at a pheasant, and pulled the trigger. With a bang, one pheasant dropped to the ground in response. This time he had finally not missed. Looking at the other pheasants flying off, he didn't chase after them. Qin smugly put away his gun. "See? I told you I could hit one. Go pick up the pheasant. We'll take it back tonight and stew it." Qin Biao quickly ran over, picked up the bloody, mangled pheasant from the ground, and couldn't help frowning. "Brother, this gun is too powerful. The pheasant's belly has been blown to pieces." Qin's expression froze. Then he waved his hand. "We can clean it up when we get back and still make do with eating it. It wasn't easy to hit one, so what if it's a little ruined?" Qin Tian, hiding in the forest, started laughing. Using buckshot to shoot pheasants. After one shot, how much could possibly be left to eat? For dealing with this kind of small thing, his own bow and arrows worked much better. As for the few pheasants that had escaped from Qin's gun, were naturally also successfully hunted by him and stored in the space. Looking at the pheasants and flying dragons in the space, Qin Tian was in a very good mood. So what if they had guns? They still couldn't hunt as much as he could with his bow and arrows. That depends on the person. The sky gradually darkened, and the roars of the wild beasts in the mountains grew louder and louder. Hushan Biao nervously carried the pheasant and said, "Bro, let's go down the mountain. I think I hear wolves howling." Hushan gripped his gun tightly. Although he hadn't managed to hunt a wild boar and felt somewhat unwilling, he did not insist further. The mountain forest at night was far more dangerous than it was now, with fierce beasts such as wild wolves coming out to hunt. Their good luck also seemed to have run out. After walking for just over 10 minutes, they heard several roars coming from around them. Qin and Hushan Biao pushed aside the bushes and saw two half-grown wild wolves gnawing on a roe deer in the open ground nearby. The bloody scene made both of them feel nauseated. What made them even more despairing was that there were two noticeably larger wild wolves in the bushes on both sides. Their green eyes were fixed on them, making their hearts tremble. "Damn, your Jinx mouth actually got it right. We really ran into a wolf pack." Even Qin's voice was trembling as he spoke, and his legs were shaking uncontrollably, as if he could collapse to the ground at any moment. "Bro, what do we do? There are actually 4 wild wolves," Qin Biao asked in a tearful voice. The wolf's eyes were so terrifying that he felt like he was about to wet his pants. Qin Tian also spotted the wild wolves in the bushes, and his heart leaped into his throat. It was obvious that this was a pack made up of 1 male and 1 female adult wild wolf with their 2 wolf cubs. A wolf pack's combat strength in the mountains was extremely formidable. Even a black bear would have to take a detour if it encountered a wolf pack. In the mountains, the only thing that could deal with a wolf pack was probably a tiger with giant claws. Qin Tian tightened his grip on the bow and arrows and took 2 slight steps back, preparing to retreat first. As for Qin and Hushan Biao, that would depend on their luck. But he had still underestimated the wild wolf's sense of smell. He had only just taken 2 steps back when he saw the largest wolf turn its head and look over. Its green eyes were full of ferocity, and Qin Tian hurriedly stopped, not daring to move. He was very sure that if he dared to run, they would definitely swarm him. Fortunately, Qin and Hushan Biao had drawn the wild wolves' attention. Frightened out of their wits, the 2 of them didn't think at all, and turned to run toward the path down the mountain. The 2 adult wild wolves let out a roar and shot toward the fleeing pair like flashes of light. In the blink of an eye, one of them was right in front of Qin, its sharp claws and fangs reaching for the back of his head. In the face of mortal danger, Qin also burst out with the desire to survive. Gripping the water bead rifle with both hands, he spun around and pulled the trigger. "Damn it, you still dare chase me? Go die?" The muzzle of the water bead rifle was almost pressed against the wild wolf's paw when a deafening gunshot rang out. The bullet went straight through the wild wolf's front leg, and the enormous impact blasted it down. Qin was also knocked to the ground by the recoil of the water bead rifle, feeling as if his heart was about to leap out of his chest. The injury to its shoulder did not stop the wild wolf's attack, but instead further stirred up its ferocity. With a savage expression, Qin worked the bolt and pulled the trigger again. "You want to kill me? Then eat another shot from me." Unfortunately, the gunshot he expected did not sound. There were no bullets left in the gun. Qin's heart went cold by half as he frantically pulled out a handful of bullets from his pocket. The wild wolf charging at him again gave him no chance to reload. Its gleaming fangs snapped toward Qin's neck. In a panic, Qin hurriedly dropped the bullets and raised the Mosin Nagant in front of himself. The wolf bit down on the gun in one bite. The tremendous impact sent the Mosin Nagant flying. Qin mustered every ounce of strength he had and kicked the wolf, then scrambled to his feet and fled for his life.